The dawn light cast long shadows across the Chicago construction site as Brianna Lewis strode purposefully through the maze of equipment and materials. At 29, the petite African-American woman commanded respect through her expertise rather than her stature. Her golden brown skin glowed with determination beneath her hard hat, and her soft curls were pulled back in a practical ponytail that couldn't diminish her natural beauty. She stopped before a massive foundation pit, her trained eye immediately catching what others had missed. The blueprints in her hands told one story, but the reality before her told another entirely. Something was dangerously wrong. "Tommy, we need to stop the pour." "Now," she spoke into her radio with quiet authority. The crackling response came back skeptical. "But we're already behind schedule, Bri." "Stop the pour," Brianna repeated firmly. "The rebar spacing is off by 6 inches on the east wall." Without hesitation, she climbed down into the pit, her movements sure and confident despite the uneven ground. The other workers watched with a mixture of respect and amazement as she methodically measured and documented the error that could have compromised the entire structure. "That woman's got eyes like a hawk," one worker muttered to another. "Yeah, and more courage than most of us," came the reply. High above them, unnoticed by the busy crew, Caleb Donovan observed the scene from the passenger seat of his Range Rover. At 34, he possessed the kind of rugged handsomeness that commanded attention. Brown hair that caught the morning light, dark eyes that missed nothing, and an expensive casual style that somehow looked perfectly at home at a construction site. He was the kind of man who could build an empire and still get his hands dirty when necessary. "Who is she?" Caleb asked his assistant, Jordan Hayes, unable to look away from the confident woman directing the work below. Jordan consulted his tablet. "The structural engineer. Brianna Lewis. Why the interest?" "She just saved us about $2 million in foundation repairs," Caleb replied, his tone carrying both respect and intrigue. "According to our reports, she's caught 14 major errors in the past 6 months across various Donovan construction projects," Jordan added. Scrolling through data, Caleb's eyebrows rose. 14? And no one thought to mention this to me. "She reports to the site supervisors who report to the project managers who report to people who've never set foot on a construction site," Caleb interrupted, his business mind already working. "Set up a meeting." An hour later, Jordan knocked on the door of the cluttered construction trailer that served as the on-site office. The space was organized chaos. Blueprints rolled and unrolled, coffee-stained calculations, and the constant hum of active project management. "Come in," Brianna called out, not looking up from her laptop where she was reviewing structural calculations. When she finally raised her eyes and saw Caleb Donovan following Jordan through the door, she did a double take. Magazine photos hadn't captured the full impact of his presence, the way he seemed to fill the small space with quiet confidence, and barely contained energy. "Ms. Lewis, I'd like you to meet Caleb Donovan," Jordan announced formally. Brianna stood smoothly, extending her hand with professional composure that impressed Caleb. "Mr. Donovan, I wasn't expecting to see you on site." The handshake lingered a moment longer than strictly professional. "I make it a point to visit projects personally," Caleb replied, studying her face. "Especially ones where the structural engineer has prevented more potential disasters than our insurance company wants to count." A slight smile played at the corners of Brianna's mouth. "Just doing my job, sir." "Your job description says structural analysis and compliance reporting," Caleb observed, settling into the chair across from her desk after Jordan discreetly exited. "It doesn't mention single-handedly maintaining our reputation for quality construction." There was something in his direct gaze that made Brianna feel both seen and slightly off balance. Quality is everyone's responsibility on a construction site. Their conversation flowed naturally as they discussed her background, community college, then state university on scholarship, working construction summers to pay for books. When she talked about her passion for structural engineering, describing buildings as stories made of steel and concrete, Caleb found himself completely captivated. "What made you choose structural engineering?" he asked, genuinely curious about the woman who had caught his professional attention so completely. The question unleashed something beautiful in Brianna's expression. Her professional composure melted into pure passion as she leaned forward. Buildings tell stories. Every beam, every joint, every foundation, they're all part of a narrative about how people live, work, dream. When I design a structure, I'm not just calculating load-bearing capacity. I'm creating the skeleton that will hold someone's life. The poetry in her technical description caught Caleb completely off guard. That's not how most engineers talk about their work. Brianna laughed, a self-deprecating sound that somehow made her more attractive. Yeah, I know, I get a bit carried away sometimes. Don't apologize for passion, Caleb said quickly. It's rare in this business. Their eyes met for a moment that stretched beyond professional courtesy, an electric understanding passing between them. Caleb felt something shift in his carefully ordered world. I'd like to discuss a proposition with you, he said finally. Are you free for dinner tonight? Brianna hesitated, her professional instincts warring with something else entirely. Mr. Donovan, I have a policy about mixing business with— This is business, he assured her, though something in his tone suggested it might be more strictly professional. Though I should warn you, I prefer discussing business over good food rather than in sterile conference rooms. After a moment's consideration, curiosity won. What kind of proposition? Caleb's smile was confident and slightly mysterious. The kind that could change the trajectory of your career. That evening, they met at Gibson's Steakhouse, where the old-world elegance of dark wood paneling and white tablecloths provided an intimate backdrop. Caleb had traded his casual sight clothes for a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and confident bearing. When Brianna entered wearing a navy dress that accentuated her curves while maintaining professional appropriateness, Caleb felt his breath catch. The maître d' guided her to his table, and he stood immediately. You look lovely, he said simply, meaning every word. Thank you. This place is incredible, Brianna replied, taking in the elegant atmosphere as she settled into her chair. The sommelier poured rich red wine, and Caleb raised his glass with a slight smile. To catching problems before they become disasters? I'll drink to that, Brianna agreed, clinking glasses with him. Over dinner, Caleb outlined his proposal, heading up Donovan Innovation Labs, a new division focused on sustainable, community-focused structural design. $20 million budget, complete creative control, the chance to pioneer the future of construction. Why me? Brianna asked, overwhelmed by the scope of the opportunity. Because you'd give me revolution, not just safe innovation, Caleb replied without hesitation. As the evening progressed, their conversation moved beyond business. Brianna shared her childhood dreams of drawing buildings, her vision for structures that elevated the human spirit. Caleb talked about his Detroit upbringing, his determination to build something meaningful, rather than just profitable. I haven't felt this way about anyone in a very long time, Caleb admitted as they stood outside the restaurant later. What way? Brianna asked, moving almost imperceptibly closer. Like I'm standing on the edge of something that could change everything. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, full of promise and the recognition that they were indeed standing on the edge of something profound. Over the following weeks, their relationship developed alongside Brianna's acceptance of the Innovation Lab's position. They stole moments between meetings, morning coffee shared over blueprints, weekend walks through the city where Brianna would point out architectural details while Caleb watched her with obvious admiration, quiet dinners where they could talk without interruption. Tell me about your dreams, Caleb said one evening as they sat in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below them. I want to build something that lasts, Brianna replied, curled against his side. And personally? He asked, his fingers brushing a curl from her face. Personally, I want to find someone who sees my dreams as blueprints, not obstacles, she said softly, then looked up at him. What about you? I used to think success was about conquering markets and building profit margins, Caleb admitted. But now I want to build something meaningful with someone I love. Do you love me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm falling in love with you more every day, he replied, and the closeness they shared that night held unspoken promises of forever. 3 months into their relationship, as Brianna's Innovation Labs was beginning to take shape with the Riverside Community Center. As their first project, an envelope arrived at her apartment with no return address. Inside was an elegant invitation to lunch at Le Bernardin, signed by someone named Jacob Sullivan with a note. I've been following your revolutionary work in sustainable construction. I believe we could accomplish incredible things together. Brianna showed the invitation to Caleb that evening, and his expression darkened immediately. Jacob Sullivan, he said grimly. I should have known he'd surface eventually. You know him? He's my former business partner. We split 3 years ago over fundamental differences in business ethics. What kind of differences? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Jacob believed profit should always come first. I believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost more. Our partnership couldn't survive that divide. Should I not go to this lunch? Caleb looked at her, his protective instincts wrestling with his respect for her independence. That's your decision. But Brianna, be careful. Jacob Sullivan doesn't do anything without an agenda. What neither of them knew was that Jacob Sullivan had been watching their relationship develop with sharp interest. At 36, Jacob was tall and imposing with silver-touched black hair, piercing green eyes, and a smile that could charm or intimidate depending on his mood. He had spent months researching Brianna's work and Caleb's obvious feelings for her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The lunch meeting at Le Bernardin was everything Jacob had planned it to be. He arrived impeccably dressed in a navy suit that cost more than most people made in a month. His charm turned to maximum as he greeted Brianna. Ms. Lewis, thank you for coming. You're even more impressive in person than your reputation suggested. Brianna felt slightly overwhelmed by his intense attention and the luxury of their surroundings. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I have to admit, I'm curious about why you wanted to meet. Because I believe you're limiting your potential at Donovan Construction, Jacob replied smoothly. I have a proposition that could elevate your career beyond anything Caleb could offer. Over the course of their meal, Jacob painted a picture of unlimited opportunity. Heading up Sullivan International's new Sustainable Innovation Division, $100 million budget, projects spanning 5 continents, the chance to influence global construction practices. I don't understand, Brianna said, genuinely confused by the offer. You don't know my work that well. Why would you offer me such an incredible opportunity? Because talent like yours shouldn't be constrained by small thinking, Jacob replied. His green eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. Caleb Donovan has always been satisfied with local success, I think globally. The offer was staggering, but something about Jacob's manner made Brianna cautious. I need time to think about this. Of course. But Brianna, may I call you Brianna? Opportunities like this don't wait forever. The following evening, Jacob made his move. He called Brianna directly, his voice carrying an urgency that immediately put her on alert. Brianna, I need to see you urgently. It's about Caleb. There's something you need to know before you make any decisions about your future with him. What are you talking about? I can't discuss this over the phone. Meet me at Le Bernardin tonight. 8 o'clock. What I have to tell you could change everything. Against her better judgment, curiosity won. That evening, Brianna found herself facing Jacob across an intimate table, his green eyes serious and concerned. I debated whether to tell you this, Jacob began, but I believe you deserve to know the truth about the man you're falling in love with. What truth? Jacob leaned forward, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. 3 years ago, when Caleb and I were partners, we were involved in the Richardson Housing Project, affordable housing for low-income families. What you don't know is that Caleb approved the use of substandard materials to increase profit margins. Brianna felt a chill run down her spine. That's impossible. Caleb would never compromise safety for money. 2 families were injured when a balcony collapsed. Caleb managed to cover it up, paid off the victims, sealed the records. Jacob pulled out a folder containing official-looking documents, building permits, inspection reports, financial records. The paperwork looked authentic, and Caleb's signature appeared on several documents. The construction industry is small, Jacob continued. If this information became public, Caleb wouldn't just lose his business. He could face criminal charges. Those families trusted him, and he betrayed that trust for profit. Brianna stared at the documents, her heart racing. Why are you telling me this? Because I care about you. Because you deserve better than a man who puts money before people's safety. And because I'm offering you a way out. What kind of way out? Work for me. Help me expose what Caleb did. Use your position at Innovation Labs to gather evidence of any other shortcuts he might be taking. In return, I'll give you everything you've ever dreamed of. Your own division, unlimited budget, international projects. You want me to spy on him. I want you to help me prevent him from hurting more innocent families. Brianna, what if your sustainable housing project uses the same cost-cutting measures? What if people get hurt because you didn't act when you had the chance? The moral weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. The idea that Caleb, the man she was falling in love with, could be capable of such callous disregard for human safety made her feel sick. "I need time to think," she whispered. "Of course, but Brianna, time is a luxury those families didn't have. And if Caleb suspects that you know about Richardson, he might try to silence you the same way he silenced them." That night, Brianna barely slept. The documents Jacob had shown her looked convincing, but everything she knew about Caleb told her they had to be fake. Yet the fear Jacob had planted, that Caleb might be hiding something dangerous, gnawed at her. The next morning, she decided to test Jacob's claims. During a casual conversation with Caleb over coffee, she brought up the Richardson housing project. "I heard you and Jacob worked on some affordable housing projects when you were partners," she said, trying to keep her tone neutral. Caleb's expression grew pained. "Richardson. Yes, that was the beginning of the end for our partnership." Brianna's heart sank. His reaction seemed to confirm Jacob's story. What happened? "Jacob wanted to use cheaper materials to increase profit margins. When I refused, he went behind my back and approved the substitutions anyway. A balcony collapsed, injuring 2 families. Relief flooded through Brianna, but Caleb continued, unaware of how his next words would be twisted. "I spent months trying to cover up Jacob's involvement to protect the company. Paid the medical expenses, settled with the families, sealed the records to prevent a scandal. By the time I realized Jacob had been systematically cutting corners on multiple projects, the damage was done." "So you did cover it up," Brianna said quietly. "I covered up Jacob's negligence to protect innocent workers who would have lost their jobs if the company failed. It was wrong, but I was trying to fix his mistakes without destroying everyone else's livelihood." To Brianna, hearing only part of the story and primed by Jacob's manipulation, Caleb's admission sounded like a confession of guilt. He had covered up the incident, paid off victims, sealed records, exactly as Jacob had claimed. That afternoon, Jacob called her. "Did you think about what we discussed?" he asked. "Yes." "And?" Caleb admitted to the cover-up, Brianna said, her voice hollow with disappointment. "I'm sorry, Brianna. I know how much you cared for him. What exactly do you want me to do? Come work for me in New York. Bring me any evidence you can find about current projects that might be using similar cost-cutting measures. Help me prevent future Richardson incidents. And if I refuse," Jacob's voice hardened slightly, "then I'll have no choice but to release the Richardson files to the authorities. Caleb will face criminal charges, Donovan Construction will collapse, and hundreds of innocent employees will lose their jobs. Is protecting one man worth destroying all those lives?" The manipulation was perfectly crafted. Jacob had taken Caleb's genuine attempt to protect workers and twisted it into a weapon to control Brianna. She felt trapped between protecting the man she loved and preventing future tragedies. "I need a guarantee," she said finally. "If I help you, the Richardson information stays sealed. No one gets hurt. You have my word. Help me for just a few weeks. Gather enough evidence to ensure Caleb can't hide any more safety violations, and I'll make sure the Richardson matter disappears forever." 3 days later, Brianna submitted her resignation from Donovan Construction and accepted Jacob's offer in New York. She told herself it was temporary, that she was protecting Caleb and preventing future harm. But once she arrived at Sullivan International, Jacob's true nature quickly emerged. The evidence gathering he wanted was far more extensive than she had expected, and his control over her life became increasingly oppressive. "You're not focusing enough," Jacob criticized after her first week. "I need documentation of every project, every supplier, every safety decision Caleb has made in the past 2 years. This is more than preventing future incidents. This looks like corporate espionage." "It's whatever it needs to be to protect innocent people," Jacob replied coldly. "Remember, Brianna, you're the one who chose to protect a man who values profit over human lives." When Brianna tried to limit her cooperation, Jacob reminded her of the consequences. "One phone call to the district attorney," he said pleasantly, "and Caleb Donovan becomes a criminal defendant instead of a celebrated businessman. Is that really what you want?" For 3 weeks, Brianna lived in a nightmare of guilt and fear. Every day, Jacob demanded more information, more evidence, more betrayal of the man she loved. When she finally found the courage to send Caleb a desperate text message, she had reached her breaking point. That night, Brianna sat in her apartment staring at her phone, Jacob's ultimatum echoing in her mind. She couldn't bear the thought of Caleb facing criminal charges because of her refusal to help. But every fiber of her being rebelled against betraying the man she loved. She tried calling Caleb several times but couldn't find the words to explain the impossible situation Jacob had trapped her in. "Don't contact me for a few days." Caleb's response came immediately. "Whatever you need. I love you." The words broke her heart because she wasn't sure she deserved them anymore. Over the next 3 weeks in New York, Jacob's psychological manipulation intensified. He used her love for Caleb as a weapon, constantly reminding her that one wrong move would destroy the man she was trying to protect. "Caleb called the office again today," Jacob mentioned casually during their daily meetings. "I told him you were in meetings with international clients." He sounded desperate. "Almost pathetic, really. You had no right. I had every right. You're protecting him by working with me, remember? The alternative is Richardson Housing Project headlines and criminal charges." As the days passed, Jacob's control became more oppressive. He monitored her communications, isolated her from anyone who might support her, and gradually wore down her resistance with a combination of praise and criticism. "You're brilliant, but you need to focus," he would say. "The information you're providing isn't detailed enough. I need more specifics about Caleb's current projects." When Brianna tried to resist or question his demands, Jacob would remind her of the stakes. "Remember those families in Richardson, Brianna. Remember what Caleb's cover-up cost them. Do you want more people to get hurt because you couldn't do what was necessary?" Meanwhile, in Chicago, Caleb was slowly going out of his mind with worry. Brianna's sudden departure, her refusal to return his calls, the cold professional responses he received when he tried to contact her through Sullivan International, none of it made sense. "Maybe she just realized she could do better," Jordan suggested gently after another failed attempt to reach her. "No," Caleb said firmly. "Something's wrong. This isn't like her." 3 weeks after Brianna's departure, during her darkest moment of despair, she finally found the courage to reach out. In the bathroom of Jacob's penthouse office, she managed to access her old phone and sent a desperate message to Caleb. "Caleb, I'm in trouble. Jacob Sullivan has been..." The message was cut short when Jacob discovered what she was doing, leading to the violent confrontation that would bring Caleb racing to New York. "To save the woman he loved. You stupid little girl," Jacob snarled, grabbing the phone from her hands. "Did you really think I wouldn't be monitoring your communications?" The Jacob Sullivan who stood before her now was nothing like the charming businessman who had manipulated her with lies about Caleb. His green eyes were cold with fury, his handsome face twisted into something ugly and dangerous. "You've just made a very serious mistake," he continued, his voice dropping to something that made her skin crawl with fear. "Jacob, please shut up." He began pacing, his agitation growing with each step. "Do you have any idea how much I've invested in you? The time, the money, the careful planning? And you try to throw it all away with one pathetic text to your ex-boyfriend?" "I just want to go home," Brianna whispered. "Home?" Jacob laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "This is your home now. I own you, Brianna. Your career, your reputation, your future. All of it belongs to me." He moved closer to her, and for the first time, Brianna felt genuinely afraid for her physical safety. "Maybe it's time you understood that more completely," Jacob said, reaching for her. Brianna dodged away from him, running for the door of his penthouse, but Jacob was faster and stronger. He caught her arm and spun her around, his grip tight enough to leave bruises. "Let me go!" she screamed, fighting against his hold. "No one can hear you," Jacob said calmly. "Penthouse apartment, soundproof walls. I could do whatever I wanted to you, and no one would ever know." Meanwhile, in Chicago, Caleb stared at the incomplete text message on his phone, his heart racing with fear and understanding. The brief message told him everything he needed to know. Brianna was in danger, had been manipulated or coerced into leaving, and was reaching out to him for help. He immediately called Jordan. "I need you to charter a plane to New York. Now." "Sir, it's midnight. Now, Jordan, and find out everything you can about Jacob Sullivan's current location. Check his corporate headquarters, his apartment, any properties he owns. What's happening? Brianna's in trouble, and I'm going to get her out." While Jordan made the arrangements, Caleb tried calling Brianna's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail every time. He tried the Sullivan International main number, but the building was closed for the night. Finally, he decided to take a more direct approach and called Jacob's personal number, a number he hadn't used in 3 years, but still remembered from their partnership days. Jacob answered on the third ring, his voice artificially calm. Caleb, what a surprise. Where is she? Caleb demanded without preamble. Where is who? Don't play games with me, Jacob. I got Brianna's message. Whatever you've done to her, whatever you've threatened her with, it ends now. Jacob's laugh was cold. I'm afraid you're too late, old friend. Brianna has made her choice, and it wasn't you. She sent me a message saying she was in trouble. Did she? How interesting. Perhaps she's having second thoughts about her decision to leave you for a real man. The taunt was designed to provoke Caleb into losing his temper, but instead, it confirmed what he already knew. Jacob was holding Brianna against her will. I'm coming to New York, Caleb said quietly. By all means. Come and see how happy she is with her new life. And Jacob, if you hurt her, if you so much as touch her, I will destroy you. Such threats, Jacob replied mockingly. But you always were too soft for the really difficult decisions, weren't you, Caleb? The line went dead, leaving Caleb with the certainty that Brianna was in immediate danger. At Jacob's penthouse, Brianna had managed to lock herself in the guest bathroom, her heart pounding as she heard Jacob moving around outside the door. Come out, Brianna, he called, his voice deceptively gentle. I'm not angry anymore. We just need to have a conversation about boundaries. She pressed her back against the door, trying to think of a way out. The bathroom had no windows, and Jacob was between her and the only exit. Her phone was gone, taken by Jacob when he'd caught her sending the message to Caleb. I know you're scared, Jacob continued, but there's no need to be. I've invested too much in your career to let you throw it all away over a moment of panic. The reasonable tone of his voice was somehow more terrifying than his earlier anger had been. Jacob, please, she called through the door. Let me leave. I'll keep working for you. I'll do whatever you want professionally, but please don't. Don't what? His voice was right outside the door now. Don't treat you like the woman you are instead of the professional colleague you pretend to be. She heard the sound of something being inserted into the lock and realized with growing terror that he was picking it. You've been leading me on for weeks, Jacob continued as he worked on the lock. Accepting my protection, my professional guidance. Did you really think I was doing all of that out of the goodness of my heart? The lock clicked, and the door began to swing open. Brianna grabbed the only weapon she could find, a heavy crystal paperweight from the vanity, and raised it defensively. Stay away from me, she warned. Jacob stepped into the bathroom, blocking her exit, his green eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. I don't think you have it in you, Brianna. You're too soft, too civilized, just like Caleb. He moved toward her, and Brianna swung the paperweight at his head with all her strength. It connected with his temple, sending him staggering backward with a curse. She ran past him, heading for the penthouse door, but Jacob recovered faster than she had hoped. He caught her in the living room, tackling her to the floor as she screamed for help that wouldn't come. You're going to regret that, he snarled, pinning her beneath him. At that moment, the penthouse door exploded inward as Caleb kicked it open, having convinced the building's security guard to let him up with a combination of bribery and desperation. The sight that greeted him, Jacob on top of Brianna, her dress torn, her face streaked with tears, filled him with a rage unlike anything he had ever experienced. Get off her, Caleb said, his voice deadly calm. Jacob looked up, startled by the interruption. How did you far? Caleb didn't let him finish the question. He crossed the room in 3 strides and hauled Jacob off Brianna, throwing him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Are you all right? He asked Brianna, kneeling beside her without taking his eyes off Jacob. Caleb, she sobbed, throwing her arms around him. I'm so sorry. I never meant he made me. I know, he said softly, holding her close while keeping Jacob in his peripheral vision. I know, baby. You're safe now. Jacob struggled to his feet, blood streaming from the cut on his temple where Brianna had hit him with the paperweight. This is touching, he said mockingly, but you're trespassing, Caleb. I could have you arrested. Go ahead and call the police, Caleb replied, his arm still around Brianna. I'm sure they'd be very interested to hear about your kidnapping and assault charges. Kidnapping? Jacob laughed. Brianna came to New York willingly. She accepted my job offer. She's been working here for 3 weeks by choice. Is that true? Caleb asked gently, looking down at Brianna. Through her tears, she managed to explain. The manipulation about Richardson housing, the half-truths twisted into weapons, the threats against Caleb's freedom and reputation. Each revelation made Caleb's expression darker and more dangerous. "You're pathetic," Caleb told Jacob when Brianna finished her story. "You couldn't compete with me professionally, so you decided to destroy my personal life instead." "I took what I wanted," Jacob replied, trying to regain his composure despite the blood on his face and his obvious physical disadvantage. "She believed my story willingly enough. Because you lied to her. You manipulated her love for me to control her. You preyed on her compassion and her trust. I showed her what her precious Caleb really was. A man willing to cover up safety violations for profit." Caleb stood slowly, helping Brianna to her feet beside him. "You showed her fabricated documents and twisted my words. But the truth is going to come out now." "What's that supposed to mean?" Caleb pulled out his phone and showed Jacob the recording app that had been running since he entered the apartment. "Every word you've said for the past 10 minutes has been recorded. Your confession to manipulation, your threats, your admission of assault." Jacob's face went pale as he realized the implications. "The construction industry is smaller than you think," Caleb continued. "By tomorrow morning, every major contractor in the country will know exactly what kind of man Jacob Sullivan really is." 2 hours later, after Jacob had signed agreements admitting to his manipulation and releasing Brianna from any employment obligations, Caleb and Brianna sat in a hotel room across town. Brianna had showered and changed into clothes that Caleb had brought for her, but she still looked fragile, shaken by her ordeal. "I'm so sorry," she whispered for the 100th time since they'd left Jacob's apartment. "You have nothing to apologize for," Caleb replied, pulling her close on the hotel room sofa. "Nothing that happened was your fault. But I believed his lies. I doubted you. I left you. You believed them because you love me. Because when someone convinced you that I was in danger, you were willing to sacrifice your own happiness to protect me. That's not something to apologize for. That's something that makes me love you even more." She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "How can you forgive me? How can you even stand to look at me after what I did?" "What you did was survive 3 weeks of psychological manipulation. What you did was find the courage to reach out for help when you needed it most. What you did was fight back when he tried to hurt you. Do you still love me?" she asked in a voice so small it broke his heart. Caleb cupped her face in his hands, looking directly into her eyes. "I never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment. Even when I thought you had chosen him, even when I believed those lies, I still loved you." "I love you too," she sobbed. "I never stopped. Every day with him, I wished I was back home with you." "Then come home with me," Caleb said softly. "Come back to Chicago. We'll rebuild everything Jacob destroyed." "What about Innovation Labs? I abandoned the project. The project is still there. Your vision, your team, everything you built. It's all waiting for you. And if I need time to heal from what he did to me, then we take all the time you need. There's no rush, no pressure. We'll go at whatever pace feels right to you." She leaned into his embrace, feeling safe for the first time in 3 weeks. "Can we just stay here tonight? I'm not ready to face the world yet." "We can stay as long as you need," Caleb promised, holding her close as she finally allowed herself to truly cry for everything she had lost and found again. In the aftermath of Jacob's exposure and arrest, the truth about Richardson Housing finally emerged. The real documents showed that Caleb had desperately tried to fix Jacob's cost-cutting decisions after the balcony collapse, spending his own money to compensate the victims and ensure similar incidents never happened again. His cover-up had been an attempt to protect innocent employees from Jacob's criminal negligence, not to hide his own wrongdoing. "I should have told you everything from the beginning," Caleb said, as they sat in the hotel room after Jacob's arrest. "If I had been completely honest about what Jacob was capable of, he never could have used my words against me." "He twisted everything," Brianna replied, finally understanding the full scope of Jacob's manipulation. "He made your protection of others look like guilt, your compassion look like criminal behavior. I'm so sorry you had to go through that because of my past." "No," she said firmly. "I went through that because Jacob Sullivan is a master manipulator who used my love for you to control me. That's on him, not you." 3 months later, Brianna stood in the Chicago construction site where it all began, reviewing plans for the Riverside Community Center. She had returned to work gradually, with Caleb's patient support helping her rebuild her confidence and remember why she had fallen in love with structural engineering in the first place. The trauma of her experience with Jacob had left scars, but it had also strengthened her resolve to create buildings that truly served their communities. The community center was her Phoenix project, rising from the ashes of manipulation and abuse to become something beautiful and meaningful. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" Caleb asked, entering the trailer with coffee for both of them. Tomorrow was the community center's groundbreaking ceremony, and Brianna would be speaking to the press and community members about the innovative, sustainable techniques they were using. "Nervous," she admitted, "but good nervous, ready nervous." "You know I'm proud of you, right?" Caleb said, settling beside her at the cluttered desk. "Not just for this project, but for how strong you've been through everything. I didn't feel strong when you found me in that apartment." Strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and building something better. She smiled, the expression lighting up her face in a way that reminded Caleb of the woman he'd first fallen in love with. "Is that your professional opinion, Mr. Construction Executive?" "It's my personal opinion, Ms. Brilliant engineer." 6 months later, at the grand opening of the Riverside Community Center, Brianna stood before a crowd of community members, industry professionals, and journalists. The building behind her was everything she had dreamed of: sustainable, beautiful, and designed to serve the neighborhood for generations. "This building represents more than innovative construction techniques," she said into the microphone, her voice strong and clear. "It represents the power of community, the strength that comes from supporting each other, and the beautiful things we can create when we refuse to let fear or manipulation define our futures." In the crowd, Caleb watched his fiancée. He had proposed quietly 3 months earlier, with pride and love that continued to grow every day. She had not only survived Jacob Sullivan's predatory manipulation, but had transformed that experience into a force for positive change in their industry. After the ceremony, as they walked through the community center watching children play and families gather, Brianna stopped in the main hall where sunlight streamed through the innovative skylights. "Do you remember what you asked me that first day?" she said to Caleb. "What was that?" "You asked me what buildings would say if they could talk." "I remember you said they would tell stories." "What story does this building tell?" Caleb looked around at the space filled with laughter and community, then back at his fiancée. "It tells the story of a brilliant woman who refused to let a predator break her spirit, who turned trauma into strength, manipulation into empowerment, and pain into something that serves others." "And what story are we going to tell next?" "Whatever story we want," he replied, pulling her close. Together. As they kissed in the center of the building that had started their journey together, surrounded by the community they served and the future they were building, Brianna knew that sometimes the most beautiful structures rose from the strongest foundations, and that love, integrity, and the courage to fight back could indeed build a better world. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more. See you next time.